fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers. We're talking position groups again. This week, we're into safeties and linebackers in the combined show. Welcome in, Keith.
Yeah, this is an interesting group, and it's quite a large group. There's a lot of players to talk about today.
Yeah, and they're in OTAs, so there's a little bit of that. We've got new quarterbacks in the room heading up that quarterback competition for the first time in 10 years. We've got coaches come out and talked about leadership roles with the team. Sounds like DK Metcalf is emerging on the offensive side of the ball, while Jordan Brooks is emerging as one of the young players on the defensive side. It's expected to kind of step up a little bit this year. And he's one of the guys we're talking about today. Have you paid attention to any of that so far this week?
Not really. I mean, it's hard. These are our padless practices with, no contact. So it's hard to put a lot of weight into these. I mean, last year at this time, we were being told, looking for the name that it was Penny Hart, that Penny Hart was going to be like the huge contributor on offense, because he looked so good in these and looked so ready and all of that. And he had 3 catches last season total. So I just this time, people get hurt, that's a big deal. Those are the kinds of things. We're kind of watching the DK Metcalf contract thing going on. I want to see who's out there. I want to make sure that guys like Tariq Woolen, who missed part of the rookie mini camp, is a full participant. Those are the things that I'm interested in. This person looks great. We've been told so many times that somebody's looked great in these, and then they didn't even make the team.
Speaking of Tariq Woolen, he's out with a little hammy until Wednesday. He's going to be a full participant on Wednesday. That goes for Rashad Penny as well. Same issue. In fact, I think last year this time he had the same sort of tweak and didn't participate in these OTAs as well. I'm talking about Rashad Penny. Shocker. And I think everyone else is doing pretty good. There's the usual suspects with off-season surgery. None of those guys are participating, including DK Metcalf. But Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs is out. Ahmadi and Neal are taking over some of the first team reps. Marquise Blair is sitting out. Sounds like he's going to be out until training camp. So anyway, let's get into it. We're talking about safeties and linebackers this year in a 3-4 multi scheme looks. And first of all, in a broad sort of sense, Keith, what is your idea about how the defense is going to be a little different in looks in the way that we use safeties and linebackers this year? And what does that kind of do to the type of personnel that we're bringing in?
Well, I mean, the defense is going to be quite different. Not only is it going to be a 3-4, which means all of the, gap assignments and everything, or the front seven is different. But you listen to the coaches talk, and the way that they're doing the defensive concepts on the back end are going to be different too. Much more of a matchup zone, more of a man look. Although there'll be plenty of handing off, and it's just a different kind of defense and a different way about going about things. What that means is that they're going to be more aggressive. They're going to be more, there's going to be more physical. There's going to be more contact with the receivers and that kind of stuff. There's going to be that, but also there's got to be a lot more reaction, and they need guys that are maybe quicker than fast in a lot of different places. And so I think that's why we've seen them go smaller at cornerback, is just because they know they need that quickness.
So Question right off the top then for you on the largest name out of both groups, Jamal Adams, safety, went through off-season surgery to repair a torn labrum, still not able to go, is probably going to hang around until training camp or probably week 2 or 3 of training camp, who knows. How does he fit into this with his up above and beyond playing style? Seems like he's more of a traditional safety as far as the scheme is concerned, but body type, I don't know if he's rugged enough to hold up, especially against run, where he needs to come up and fill holes and all that kind of stuff, which seems to be the way that the safeties are treated in this defense, especially strong safeties. They're playing more on the line of scrimmage. They are dropping back into coverages. A lot of that is disguise oriented. More often than not, though, they're up there defending the run first and foremost, and then they're dropping back into coverage against tight ends and running backs primarily. How does Jamal Adams fit into this thing?
I think Jamal Adams fits fine. What you don't want Jamal Adams doing is dropping back as a 2-deep safety and covering wide receivers. That's not his skill set, right? He is a special player up around the line of scrimmage. And I know you're concerned about like durability and all of that. And I kind of am too, given the last 2 off seasons, he's needed surgery. But if you try to avoid him getting hurt by playing him in a different way, you take away what makes him special.
I agree.
And so you kind of just have to let him be himself and, hope that it works out as far on the injury front. At least he's a guy we know that, if his shoulder gets banged up, he'll play through it and play well through it. And then just need another surgery in the off season. So it's not like one of those guys that every little cut or scratch means they're going to miss 3 weeks. So
it's true. He's tough as nails. I give him that.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, you get diminishing returns. You got to be honest with me. By, say, week 12, it's not the same Jamal Adams is lining up in week 1.
Yeah. That's when he sits out for 3 weeks and then comes back and is ready for the playoffs. I don't have an answer for you on what to do with Jamal Adams. I think that I
agree with you, though. You got to play him the way that the scheme dictates you play him. You can't reserve him like you do a Chris Carson on the offensive side. You need Jamal Adams has to go all out. It's all out 100% all the time, or he's not Jamal Adams. And he's just another guy. And we need that guy. He's the guy that can tilt the field for you. He can play multiple positions. He can move around for you. He can blitz and rush the passer better than almost any defensive back in the entire NFL. When given that opportunity. And I'd like to see a little bit more of that this year. Maybe that's what keeps him cleaner this year, is give him more opportunities to kind of wrestle the passer or use his speed to get around the edge where he's not fighting through blocks to make tackles, but he's making plays on the ball and making plays on the quarterback.
Yeah. That's one way to do it. The other thing that they could do is if they, the 2-minute offense, or 2-minute defense, right? The other team's throwing and they're throwing on every down and you're not blitzing, or at least not blitzing your safety because they've got the protection set up to pick up, unless you're bringing a lot of people, and you don't want to do that in that situation because that's when you give it the big play. So in that situation, what do you do with Jamal Adams? Well, maybe you pull him and you put in a guy who's better in coverage. And that's when you see, Hugo Ahmadi come in as a second deep safety type of situation. And I could see that type. So basically you can find different times where he's not the best person to have on the field and bring him out and give him less reps, which will keep him healthier, kind of load management a little bit by, instead of having him play 100% of the snaps in the games when he's there to play them, you get that number down to 90. Or, something like that. Just a few less snaps, a few less hits. It's just less contact, and it'll help his body hold up a little more.
And it'll give us a chance to play some younger guys as well. Let's go to Quandre Diggs. Love the player. Got a new contract. It was a horrible situation in the last 5 minutes of that game down in Arizona to have a broken leg out of that situation. Very emotional. Didn't know how that was going to impact his offseason with free agency pending. Just the worst case scenario for him. Everything turned out. Ended up getting the contract that Seattle was probably going to give him anyway. He's back. He's a natural leader now on this defense, minus Bobby Wagner. So Quandre Diggs' role in this, I think it gets easier in this defense because it is a too high situation. He's not the only guy back there trying to make plays. I think it actually gives him an opportunity to make more plays, which is, I think, the defense almost seems like it's going to be designed around his abilities.
Well, it's not just his ability, but it's because it's not just him. Like, if you got a 2 deep safety, you got 2 safeties back there. But it is definitely designed around giving him an opportunity to be himself in the best way possible. And
making plays.
Yeah. So he can just fly around and make plays and do his thing. Everyone's going to like that. I mean, there's a reason why they brought him back. He is a good player. He's a very underrated player. And he's going to be kind of the center of what the Seahawks are doing as far as coverage.
And I guess that's what I was trying to say earlier. Yeah.
So
yeah, and he's beloved. I mean, everyone. I was watching the game. It just happened to be on the NFL Network the other night. It was the Arizona Cardinals Seahawks game, Russell Wilson's last game of the year last year, and it showed that play and just the emotion that was going on, not only with Quandre Diggs but all the players around that was something else. So he's just going to be one of those natural leaders on that defense. I'm excited, and because I think when you pair him with somebody else that has the ability that he doesn't have to worry about everything. Now he just needs to worry about a quarter. To me, that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the other guys in the safety room. There's just a whole bunch of players now after those 2 starters.
Because those two are going to play a lot. Yeah. And everyone else we're going to talk about isn't, except unless there's an injury. And there's a couple of players here that could play nickel type stuff. And so let's talk about that first. Let's talk about Hugo Ahmadi, Ryan Neal, and Marquise Blair. Because all those guys seem to be in the same bucket. And so why don't we just kind of run through those? Ahmadi last year was tasked with being kind of the nickel corner on the team. I thought he did a pretty decent job. Now he's got some competition with Justin Coleman coming back after a couple of years off the team. Ryan Neal is a larger, longer prospect, a big thumper. You'd think he's kind of a strong safety type, but he's really scheme diverse, can play both strong safety and free safety for you. Ryan Neal was a corner. Ryan Neal was a
corner option. Yeah.
The team moved him to safety. They moved him back to corner. They moved him to safety again, and now he can really do anything. He started at strong safety. He's played a bunch of free safety for them. He's played outside corner for them, and at 6'3", 200 pounds, like, he's very scheme diverse. He can do a lot of different things, and he's a guy that should get more playing time.
So Keith, he seems to pass the eye test. Like, he just seems to be making plays on the ball. He doesn't get quite the opportunities that he should get, but maybe with your idea of sitting Jamal Adams for 10 snaps a game and allowing a player like Ryan Neal to come in and fill that void, may give an opportunity to kind of stand out a little bit.
Yeah, and that would be great. I mean, Ryan Neal's been around for this team forever, so I was actually thinking, I was looking at his age, trying to figure out, I was looking for that. He's only 26. And I
think this is his 3rd year.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I just was thinking with all the position changes that he's had, I was thinking he was going to be like 28, 29. I'm like, yeah, well, do you really want to develop a guy who's already at that age? No, he's 26. Get him in there and let him continue to play and get better, because good things happen when he's out there. And the fact that he is a corner, he's got those skills and has the size of a safety, and he's got those skills. Like, it's just a good combination. He's a great tackler. Like, that's,
So how do we get to the point in this storyline for Marquise Blair that turns around from a sad, sort of unfulfilled promise story to a fulfilling redemption level? Oh my gosh, this guy is something else, and we need to sign him to a new contract.
Well, there's one thing that I would point to, because even though he's missed the last 2 years, which both times the Seahawks went into the season believing that he was going to be a big part of what they were going to do, and then he got hurt right away. He's only 24. He's a young kid.
And those injuries are unrelated.
Yes. He's a year older than Tariq Woolen. He's a full year younger than Hugo Ahmadi, right? He's a guy that you can look at me like, you know what, those 2 years suck because he was out and it like that's bad for his career and everything. He's such a young guy. Like there are guys that were drafted that are as the same age as Marquise Blair, and he's got 3 years in the league. So, yeah, I mean, that to me is the part where I look at and I go, yeah, he's a guy that you don't have to write off as, oh, we can't depend on him or anything, because at his age, he's still young enough. Let him get healthy, get him out there. He should come in and continue to be good. I mean, he looked legit good before his injury, both the last 2 years. So
one other guy I wanted to mention before the other ones is Bubba Bolton, undrafted rookie free agent, has come in. The only reason I'm putting him into this bucket is that he's listed on .com as a free safety. He does have some size. He's got some speed and agility and athleticism to him. There was talk early, at least by us, if not a few others, about him possibly sticking for his special teams ability. Mm-hmm. But he's another guy that could come in and play a little bit of that nickel stuff as well as on the back end.
Yeah, 6'3", 204, lots of speed. Looks like a guy that can do things. He's kind of raw in that he's learning, how to take proper routes to things when you have a lot of ground to cover and that kind of stuff. But I trust in good coaching. And so he's a guy that is really interesting. And definitely a special teams guy. Like, I mean, that speed, that size, get him running downhill at people. That could be really interesting.
Yeah, no, he's one of the interesting guys on the roster that's, on the back end now. But I think once playing starts and so forth, he's a guy that has an opportunity to stand out just from his athleticism. Mm-hmm. Joey Blount is another guy. Those are kind of similar guys in the fact that they're athletic, big thumpers. Scheme diverse. Josh Jones, Scott Nelson, and Deontay Williams round out the safety group. Any word on those guys?
Well, I'd say all of them except for Josh Jones are rookies. They're all undrafted rookies. There's 4 in that list. Right? Bowden, Nelson, and Williams. That's a lot in one room. Josh Jones is in his 5th year. He's a guy who's 27, 6'1",
yeah.
has
6th year. Yeah.
Yeah. Has experience, has played both special teams and has gotten on the field as a defensive player and been okay. So I think he fits more into the realm of depth and giving them some options, especially if Blair gets hurt again or that kind of thing. I wouldn't have lumped him in with the all the undrafted rookies.
All right. My mistake. I was just unfamiliar with Scott Nelson. I hadn't looked at his profile as far as age and so forth. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I was like, Josh Jones is the
Josh Jones.
If I misspoke and said Scott Nelson is one of the rookies. So if I misspoke and said Nelson, I meant Josh Jones. He's the guy who's
Josh Jones. Yes, year. You did say Josh Jones.
Okay.
All right, linebackers. Give me an overall impression about this group, considering the change that we just went through and the responsibility changes that are happening.
Well, losing Bobby Wagner makes everything harder because he's so good and he was the leader of the defense. He was the captain. He was everything. And so you look at this group and you go, there's a lot of people on here. How many of them do you trust as full-time players? And then who's missing on this list? Like, who are the other guys? Because you know who I don't see as on the linebacker list? Guys that played linebacker light last year, like Alton Robinson. That I expect to play a lot of outside linebacker this year. So it's hard to really get a gauge on this. I do still think they lack someone in the middle. I think they're missing that. That's one of the things they've got unable to do this year.
They've got 14 linebackers on this list right now.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of go through them. So we know Jordan Brooks is going to be there. I talked about Jordan Brooks being pointed out by the coach ahead of time as being a guy that he's turning to now for some leadership on the team, which is a good thing. I think it's a natural fit. He's going to be calling the defense this year, calling out the plays just like Bobby Wagner did last year.
Yeah, he's taking Bobby's role in the middle.
And he had 184 combined tackles last year.
Yeah.
Which broke Bobby Wagner's team record. And I think led the NFL, if I'm not mistaken. Well, which is just absurd.
I mean,
it's crazy.
You break Bobby Wagner's record. That's something, because Wagner has been one of the best that's ever done.
And all it took for that to happen was Wagner missed the last 2 games of the season. He would have broke his own record because he was right there. They were neck and neck. Yep. All right, Jordan Brooks. So he's going to be one of the middle linebackers this year. So he is going through a little bit of a shift. How much of a shift, Keith?
It's not that much. Going from, because he was a weak side linebacker in a 4-3, moving from that to an interior linebacker in a 3-4. It's going to shift him. It's going to shift him a gap and a half towards the middle a little bit more in terms of where he lines up. But what he does is going to be very similar. He's going to be off the line of scrimmage. He's going to be read, react, go, make tackles, use his speed. I mean, it plays very well into what he does. Before I get to Cody Barton, there's a new linebacker on the team, Uchenna Nwaso, a guy from the Chargers. Sounds like he's coming in to play the strong side. And then Cody Barton is going to be pairing in the middle with Jordan Brooks. Yep.
And then it's going to be probably one of Daryl Taylor and Alton Robinson on the other side.
Yeah. That'll looks to be the starting 4. And they've got Daryl Taylor kind of where they're looking at maybe having him be an outside linebacker / defensive end, which is much more common in the old alignment scheme. In a 3-4, your defensive ends have to be bigger because they've got a 2 gap and they've got to move inside one position, one gap more than you would think they would normally do that. And so there's wonder if maybe he's undersized for that. But we'll see.
260. I think he's 268, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, they'll find a role for him. The ideal 3-4 defensive end is like 280, 285. And he's not. He's like 260. But he's also a little big for an outside linebacker. But like I said, they'll find a role for him. He is just too damn talented. He was one of the better players on the defense last year. And so you mentioned Alton Robinson, and then you've got Boye Mafe and Tariq Smith as well in those roles that you would typically, it's hard to kind of say if they're defensive ends or linebackers. I've kind of got them in a defensive end bucket on my roster that I've instructed here, just because the linebacker room is just completely crazy. But yeah, I would say Boye Mafe has a shot. I think a combination of him and Alton Robinson are that weak side outside linebacker, which is different than a weak side outside linebacker from last year, right? That was where Brooks was playing. It was off the line of scrimmage, and it was, you saw it. He was Jordan Brooks. In a 3-4. Right. If you think back to the San Francisco Seattle rivalry was at its hottest, Alden Smith was the prototype weak side 3-4 outside linebacker. Small, fast, pass rusher, can get around the corner. Like he's the prototype. And Boye Mafe fits into that role. That's who he is. And so he's going to be in line for that. I think Alton Robinson fits that really well. So the two of them are going to battle out for that job.
All right, let's talk about Cody Barton for a minute. It looks like he's going to elevate this year, Keith. He's going from a special teams kind of guy, did very well doing that, to coming in, filling in for Bobby Wagner last year when Bobby Wagner was out. did an admirable job just to kind of hold down that position. And now he's elevated to a starter.
Yeah.
And you're not convinced that he's good enough to be a starter in this defense.
I'm not. So the next part of what I'm going to say is going to completely counteract that. Because when Barton came in for Wagner, I mean, you look at that, you have this guy that has, the team has, never really committed to as a starter, and through 3 years, and he comes in for an all-pro, and you're like, wow, this is going to be bad. Like the drop-off's going to be huge. And it kind of wasn't. And that's not to say that, he was fantastic or that he was as good as Bobby, but it wasn't the drastic, like, oh my God, that I expected. He held it down really well. He made some plays. He, made a lot of tackles, did a lot of good things. I'm still concerned about him as a full-time starter at 237 pounds. He's not the biggest guy. He has never been the best tackler. He's had a lot of running backs bounce off of him. But at the same time, he didn't really have that problem once he became a starter. So I think what's happened is, for me and for a lot of other fans that I've spoken with, is that image of him as a strong side linebacker when he was playing way out of position as a rookie.
From his rookie year.
Yeah. It's kind of lodged into people's minds as that's more of who he is. And I'm saying by people, I am including myself in that. And we haven't necessarily given him a complete fair shake as the possibility of being a starter at a different position besides, one where he was expected to be up at the line of scrimmage and set the edge. So,
right.
And, we'll see what happens. Like, he's a guy that, could come in and really just do well. When he was drafted, there was some excitement. He has some speed. He's a guy that was kind of thought of as, hey, this is the heir apparent to Bobby Wagner, or at least the heir apparent to KJ Wright. And that, because he's got the athleticism, he's got the speed, he's got some nice things. Yeah. But then he didn't really show it as a rookie. And we kind of were just like, oh, well, that was disappointing. And especially when they turned around and drafted Jordan Brooks the following year, and he got bumped from that role.
You had Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright, and I think Michael Kendricks in his rookie years starters, and that's hard to penetrate that group. And then, anyway, he's out there. He's there now. I think he's going to get a good shot. We'll see how it goes. It could be the weak link, or it could be that the linebacker group is the strongest group on the team. There's a lot of youth here and a new player in Nwasu that kind of needs to integrate. We'll see. Yeah,
my concern wasn't necessarily so much about Barton. It was that what happens if Barton turns out not to be the guy? I don't see a guy on here.
Yeah, everyone else seems to be outside.
Mm-hmm. I mean, those are the guys.
The guy, the Joel Lagenbuhe
sure,
from Chicago that we picked up, that's kind of a special teams guy. I think he's only got like 20 snaps.
Yeah,
taking plays in the NFL, but I think he's a middle linebacker. Nick Ballore, could come in and play a little bit of that.
He's
Denver
a special team, and
totally. I know. Aaron Donker's a big guy, but they've got him coming off the edge as well this year.
Mm-hmm.
Tanner Muse, again, another fast, undersized kind of guy. That
what surprised me is because Aaron Donker was a rookie last year, and so he's there. He's earning his spot, playing some special teams, all of that. I think he's other than Nick Ballore, who doesn't count because he's not really a linebacker. Aaron Donker is the oldest linebacker on this roster.
Interesting. 27 years old.
Yeah. He's the oldest linebacker that the Seahawks have rostered right now.
And he's their foreign player exemption.
Mm-hmm.
Again, and I had an ACL last year, which was unfortunate. So Tanner Muse, the safety that used to be with the Raiders, that we picked up is still hanging around on the roster. I'm still intrigued by him because he had numbers and athletic profiles in the draft that I was really liked. John Radigan, a guy from Army that's hanging around. Cam Williams, Levi Jones, and Joshua Jugo rounds that out.
Mm-hmm.
So thoughts overall. We've talked about a lot of players. Is this going to be a strength or a weakness on this team?
Can I say both? Because I really like Jordan Brooks, and I think Nwasu is going to be a good addition on the strong side. And I think the weak side position with a guy like Boye Mafe, Alton Robinson, those guys are going to be good there. Cody Barton.
So starters.
Yeah, and then there's Cody Barton, who I'm still not as sold on, even though I was trying to talk you into it a couple minutes ago. I don't trust a single other name on that roster after them. If there's, to me, the lack of depth, if one of those guys get hurt, especially Cody Barton, if he gets hurt or if he doesn't pan out,
dude,
there's nothing else on the roster.
I would be less concerned about Cody Barton than I would be about Nwasu or Brooks. If those guys go down, it's not looking great.
Well, if Nwasu goes down, it's an outside linebacker spot. It's a strong side. You could come up with a way to make it work with a Ben Burke-Hervin or one of those guys that makes the roster for special teams reasons. You could make it work, right? I mean,
and Darrell Taylor.
Sure.
I mean, I would just put.
Darrell Taylor. And that's the other thing. You'd stick Darrell Taylor. Would you could slide him out there?
Jamal Adams is going to take some snaps there anyway. You could throw Jamal Adams there for a few snaps. So yeah, I know.
But it's really, if they lose Jordan Brooks, the whole interior of that defense falls apart because they just there's no way, there's no depth to replace them. And that was one of the things that I was concerned about. I really wanted them to get another true middle linebacker so that we had three with Barton, Brooks, and then whoever that third person is. And I just don't see it.
I think that the more that we talk, so we talked about corners already, safeties, and now linebackers, and we did talk about a few of these defensive ends we've got coming up. I think everything looks good on the surface as far as starters. Like who's going to come in and play the most of the snaps? It's that depth part that are unknown. Could be good, could be better than advertised, especially on the cornerback side. I think there's plenty of names on the safeties to be able to get a good group together there, especially if a guy like Marquise Blair stays healthy. I think that group is really actually a strength. And then the linebacker thing is just a whole bunch of unknowns, really. Yeah. And it's part of it is I don't even know where they're going to scheme up and line up and really kind of. The coaches have plans, obviously, for each one of these players, and it'll just be interesting to see how that comes to fruition during practice. You can kind of see this come together a little bit. Because that Dick Fangio defense, I sent you an article I want you to read. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, but that thing is so in depth. It kind of goes through the layers of the defense and assignments and what we'll likely see this year. And I'd like to be able to talk about that here, after we get done with the position groups at some point.
Oh, absolutely. We need to do that anyway, just for our own, I know, right? Prep for the season. But
it's a layer of complexity that before the way that Pete Carroll wanted to run it, it was just simple. It's like line up and play and go do your job. And we're just going to be better at it than the offense. Now it's like, woohoo. It's similar to me. It's similar to the idea of what the offense is trying to do. The offense wants to line up in the same sort of looks, the same package. They want to get to the line of scrimmage and with the disguise and then move around and run plays out of the same sort of formations. And the defense is kind of the same way. They want to line up the same way. They want to show the same looks pre-snap so that the quarterback has to make post-snap decisions and reads. It just makes it a little more complicated, gives your guys up front a chance to get home with an extra little step, and then on the back end it helps too. So it'll be interesting.
I've said this in the show in the past, this is a new defense. This is a completely new scheme. This isn't, we made a little tweak or we just changed who's calling plays. Like Pete Carroll, when during this process was like, we need to evolve. And so, when they hired these coaches and they brought in guys like Desai, and it was, we need new ideas, we need new thoughts, we need to be better by incorporating new stuff. And I'm just really impressed that a guy who's 70, about to be 71, is willing to be like, you know what, the stuff that we've done that's worked really well and got us a championship, it was fine, but we need to evolve. We need to continue to evolve and not just rest on, hey, we know it worked once, type of thing. And very few coaches can put their ego away to do that ever. And very few coaches that are 70 and, looking at trying to make one, last couple, 3 years of putting a team together to try and win one more championship are willing to just completely evolve and change their entire scheme.
I totally agree. I absolutely totally agree. He saw coaches come into the league like Sean McVay and Shanahan and change offenses. And the Seahawks offense used to be set up to defeat certain offenses, and those were kind of going away. And they learned how to defeat the Pete Carroll defenses. Now you've got defenses that are specifically designed, and we're talking about the Vic Fangio scheme, that are specifically designed to defeat offenses like the Rams, like the 49ers and others. Yeah. And so, it's something different and new for us as well. So I'm excited. I really am excited because it's one of those deals where you either you keep up and lead the pack, or you fall behind. And we were clearly doing that, and fans knew that. We were all kind of frustrated about the defense for years. Well, not just this last year.
It's also what happened on the offensive side, right? They came in, they installed the zone scheme, running game, and they made it work. And then they got Wilson, and there was, the zone read kind of stuff, even though he never kept the ball. But what they did, it worked until it stopped working. And they needed to evolve. They needed to make some changes. And that's what Shane Waldron brought, was a completely new offense. And now they've got a completely new defense. And it's a offense and defense that are going to be more modern and less old school.
Yeah.
So.
Right. With some competence. I mean, you can say you're going to bring in somebody new and whatever, but it's the maturity of, I think Pete Carroll demands the maturity of the coordinators. And to me, that's the best of both worlds. You get a really competent head coach that's been there, it's done it all, that's willing to invest into that young talent, the young ideas, the forward thinking. And that's what everyone was asking for the last couple of years. Like, fire Pete Carroll, because he's old, he's antiquated, blah, blah, blah. This shows that he's completely adaptable and willing to do whatever it takes to get back to the top. And I'm really excited for it.
Yeah. So. I mean, it met all the requirements, I think, of the fire Pete Carroll crowd without actually letting go of Pete Carroll, because it allows the team to keep what Pete Carroll does best, which is culture building and, and all that stuff for the team. And he's so good at it. He's one of the best in the NFL at it, if not the best at the NFL at it. And it allows him to do that without having, the other parts that everyone was frustrated with, which is, him kind of becoming a bit of a dinosaur in terms of his scheme. And now he's not. So, there's that.
All right. So next time we're going to finish up with defensive tackles, defensive ends, and then we'll switch back to the offense. We did quarterbacks before. We'll get everything else. And then we'll continue. We'll continue on. So find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. You can find the show, SeahawksPlaybook.com. Seahawks Playbook on your favorite podcast app and YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button. Please share it. All that good stuff. So until next time, go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.